Cha Kripa Sindhave Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. So my heartfelt greetings to all of you. Thank you for coming along this morning. Today's topic is surrender or suffer. No one wants to suffer. But so often we're so engaged in the struggle to not suffer that it just creates more suffering. And we'll do anything but stop struggling. Because it sounds very easy, just stop struggling. But it's not quite so simple. Actually, it is very simple, but we make things very complicated. And it feels a great relief to just stop. Just stop your struggle. And one of the best ways to stop struggling is to stop being absorbed in your own mind. But the mind has like a gravitational pull that pulls your awareness into it constantly. So it's not so straightforward for most people to just step back from their own mind. So we've just practiced some kirtan, chanting all together with musical instruments. This is called Sankirtan. And in this current age, the most effective spiritual practice is to chant mantra, chant the divine names of God together. And another more personal practice you can do is the chanting on a rosary, or in Sanskrit it's called a mala, japa mala. So we're going to do one round of this technique, 108 rounds of this same mantra, can't get enough of it, Hare Krishna mantra. So the technique is to take it in your right hand, and we chant one, we don't chant on the head bead, we chant on the bead next to it, and we do one full repetition of the mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then you move to the next one, round and around, until you get to here. And then you go back the other way. But we'll just be doing one round today. So we're all going to do one round of this together, synchronized, out loud. So we can be completely absorbed in the mantra. And when you're chanting, just hear the mantra. You don't need to speculate, you don't need to imagine. Just hear the mantra, and the mantra will do everything for you. Try not to have the ego that you are chanting, rather the mantra is just coming directly from the spiritual world. And absorb your mind in the mantra, and the mantra completely in your mind. So Felix is going to hand out malas for those who don't have one. So mantra is comprised of two words. The Sanskrit word for mind means manas. It is manas. And so man and then tra. Tra is coming from the root triate, which delivers. So that which delivers you from the enmeshment and the oscillating thoughts of your own mind, that is a mantra. So mantra is very powerful. And this mantra is called the Maha Mantra. Maha means great. So of all the mantras, this mantra is the greatest. And so it's very powerful and very effective. And Krish means attractive. Krish and Na, Krishna. The Na refers to Ananda, bliss, and it also means existence. So that being which is most attractive, most beautiful in all of existence, that is Krishna. And Hare is coming from Hara. In the vocative case it is Hare, which denotes the goddess, she who steals away your troubles, steals away your mind. So all your troubles will be removed by chanting this mantra. And Rama is coming from Ramariti, that who personality who gives pleasure. So there's a lot of pleasure, there's a lot of nectar in this mantra. And the more you can absorb your total awareness in it, the more you will taste it. So is everyone ready?
Yes.
Very good. So we'll all chant together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare closing the eyes and just taking a moment to notice any effects of the practice. Noticing any effects on the body, on the mind. Just noticing how you feel. When you're ready, gently opening the eyes and coming back to present. So, surrender or struggle, the choice is ours. There's one a very beautiful verse from the Ramayana, also quoted in Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Chamrita. Sakrid eva prapano yas tvavasmati cha yachyate abhayam sarvada tasmai dadami etad vartam mama. Krishna is saying in the form of Lord Ram, if anyone surrenders to me even once with their full heart, saying, I am yours, I will protect that person in all circumstances. This is my promise. So the Supreme Lord is making this promise. If you just say to him just one time, just offer yourself to him, then your whole life will be taken care of. End of the class. Is it clear? Sounds very easy. Sometimes the most deep teachings are the most simplest. Just like we're chanting this mantra, it seems so simple. How can this have any effect? I need to learn how to do a headstand with my leg wrapped around my head, upside down, underwater. Then I'll be very advanced. But actually, the simple teachings, it doesn't mean that they lack depth. And we can kind of dismiss them because they are so simple, and we think, yes, I can do this. I am doing it. But if you really investigate honestly, are you really doing it? Even with this chanting of the mantra, if you do it just one time, fully absorbed in the mantra, no imagination, no speculation, all of your karmas will be destroyed. And you do it one more time, fully absorbed, you'll get prem, divine love. So we just chanted 108 rounds. Are all our karmas finished? It depends how absorbed we were. So,
Krishna, I am yours.
yes, everyone repeat. Krishna, I am yours.
Krishna, I am yours.
With feeling. Krishna, I am yours.
Krishna, I'm yours.
Yes. So often in modern times, particularly in a Western mindset, when we hear this word surrender, we might think of a white flag on the battlefield. We might think, oh, surrender means failure. I've tried very hard, but it hasn't worked out, so then I have to admit defeat. And in this way, we downgrade surrender to something we'd rather not do. And very much in our modern life, we live very disconnected from just the natural cycles of nature, such as the phases of the moon, the changing seasons, night, day, happiness, distress, loss, gain, up and down. All these things are just very natural in this world, but we're always trying to cultivate a lifestyle that tries to minimize these, and that's okay to a certain degree, but it makes us quite removed from the natural order of things. So we live in houses with air conditioning, we drive a car with air conditioning, so then we never become accustomed to the changing temperatures of the season. And then if any time we have to go outside, oh, it's a big problem, it's raining today, it's cold today, it's too hot, I'll go back into my house with the AC, set at a certain temperature all year round. And in this way we become more and more disconnected just from the natural seasons of life. Eating food that's out of season, strawberries in the middle of winter, which none of this is good for your health, none of it's good for the planet, food miles. So it's very helpful to live in harmony with this is on just a very practical level, living in harmony with the changing nature of the seasons on this planet. Not just the external seasons, but the internal seasons of your own mind. In New Zealand, there's one famous song, 4 seasons in one day. Because in New Zealand, you can have all 4 seasons in one day. Not like here in Goa where the temperature is quite stable. I was sitting out on the beach yesterday and I was like, oh, it's really nice being here. You know, it's not going to rain. You don't have to bring your umbrella. It's not like that in New Zealand. Even if you go out in the middle of summer, you have to take your umbrella, raincoat. Never know what's going to happen. If you're a gardener, then you work with the seasons. But in our modern lifestyle, we're always trying to just fixate on one external or internal season all the time. And because this is actually out of touch with the natural order of things, then it's very artificial. And because it can't be maintained, then it's a cause of great suffering. So a few years back, I was living in quite a remote area, and I used to access the property via a tiny little boat. And to get to work every day, I had to cross the harbour on this little boat. So rain, hail, shine, storm, big waves, flat sea, I had to cross on this boat. So my life got very in tune with the natural cycles of the seasons. And the tides, you always have to be mindful of the tide. And it was a real baptism by fire, actually, because I had 0 boating experience before that. So sometimes I wake up in the morning and the boat's not even there. It's got dragged down the harbour, or it's floating upside down. So it was very helpful to get in tune with just the natural flow of the seasons. And I suggest 100% of the time when you're suffering, apart from if it's some maybe physical injury, the cause of our suffering is we're trying to hold on to a certain perspective. And when we're trying to hold on to a certain perspective, and that perspective that we have is not being matched in our external reality, that causes suffering. So you can just think for yourself, any time that you've suffered, what were you trying to hold on to in your internal mental space? Some way that you wanted it to be. And because that wasn't manifesting for you, it was causing suffering. And the more and more we clutch on to that one particular perspective, the more acute our suffering becomes. And then we engage in an endless endeavor of how to arrange our life in such a way that we can fulfill the certain perspective that we have. And it becomes like quicksand. And the more and more you just sink into it, and then it's more struggle comes, more struggle. Last year, I woke up one morning and I was feeling some tension in my body. And then I was driving along in my vehicle and it just dawned to me, I'm trying to hold on to a particular perspective, and that's why I'm feeling this contraction. And it didn't even matter what I was trying to hold on to. It's just when I had that awareness, I'm trying to hold on. The energetic dynamics in your body, I'm trying to hold on to something. Then I could just see that. And it just let it go and it dissipated away. Because if you really see something, seeing something here is different to understanding. Because you can have an intellectual understanding of something, but it doesn't necessarily change your behavior or make that state of contraction go away. But when you really see something, instantly, that thing that you are holding on to can completely change in your life when you actually get a realization of something. So many times, again and again and again, we can hear the same teaching, we can hear this, we can hear that, but it's all just an understanding. And we can be very learned, know all the slokas, know this and that, but it's all just an understanding. And when you actually see it, when you actually realize it, it's like undoing a bow, and then the whole present unwraps, and then there it is. So understanding can lead to realization, but they're not the same thing. So because we have this propensity to always try and arrange and engage our mind and intelligence to fulfill this desire or this certain perspective that we're trying to hold on to, our whole life becomes engaged in this and trying to fulfill so many perspectives, so many desires. And then as you're working towards one, then another one comes, and it's endless. And then the struggle on the hamster wheel of life just keeps going eternally, eternally, eternally. And then the next thing you know, you're doing a PhD, you're in a 9-to-5 rat race, you're working till you're 60 years old, and then you've maybe finally paid off your mortgage, and then you get cancer, and then you die. And your whole life goes by, and you haven't been able to enjoy anything. And this is the mainstream narrative of what you should do. And you ask the people, oh, are you happy? Well, no, I'm not happy, but still you should follow because this is what society does. We're quite mad. So, what does it actually mean to stop struggling, to surrender? What does it actually mean? This is a question I have for you. What does it invoke for you? What does it feel like?
When we are drawing, drawing is
Drowning?
drowning.
Uh-huh.
And then should we struggle? What mean by their surrender?
Give you the mic.
Should we just give up and drown?
Hare Krishna. Like, suppose we are here and I don't know how to swim. So, if I am drowning, just see. So, what is mean by surrender there? Like, what should I do? Surrender means what? Like, should I give up or what should I do? Like, how can I define surrender or struggle there while drowning in that moment?
Yeah. If you've ever had an experience of drowning, then you'll know what he's talking about very well.
Like in that moment, we just like out of mind and just like
It's a complete letting go.
everything like we just move your hand and try to just get out in that moment.
Mhm.
It's not under our control.
Yeah.
Like it's not under our control, I think.
Yes. Opening up to the fact that we are not in control, we are not the controllers.
And I guess this is actually the root of the struggle, is this propensity, I am in control, I am the controller. And because I am the controller, I can arrange so many things in my life. I can fix the whole world to turn out how I want it to be. Because I'm so intelligent at how I deem the world should be, it should be this way. So yes, the root of the problem is this propensity of I am the controller. And that's the root of all our suffering. But actually there's only one supreme controller. And that's Bhagavan. That's God. And there's one verse in Bhagavad Gita, one who is not connected with the Supreme in divine consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. How can there be any happiness without peace? So all fear, all struggle comes from a forgetfulness of our common guardian. There's a very intelligent, all-conscious, omnipotent, omnipresent controller present everywhere in this universe. Nothing is random, nothing is out of place. From one point of view, there's no mistakes. Everything is going on perfectly. And when we forget that, then we get lost eternally in trying to arrange, fix, and manipulate this world in line with our own egoic agenda. So in about 2018, 2019, I started to practice just this very simple saying, just allow everything to be as it is. Another very simple teaching, yeah? Sounds really simple. So, what does it mean to you? Just allow everything to be as it is.
Accept
Accept
what's happening around.
what's happening, yes?
Like something happening wrong, so we should not allow that.
So-
As it is. Like someone hurting somebody,
Uh-huh.
so we should not just allow, we should just interfere. Like,
Yeah, so if you see someone beating someone, then you should do something about that. Because if you just allow everything to be as it is, oh look, he's just beating that lady.
we
So-
should just ask what Lord Krishna will do, and then by the name of Lord Krishna, we should also do like what Lord Krishna did save what Mahabharata. Lord Krishna.
Yes, Krishna engaged in the war, he was there.
Sometimes we have to engage in war in daily life.
So sometimes surrender or just allowing everything to be as it is, it can sound like it's invoking passivity, just doing nothing. Just sit back and allow everything to be as it is, Om Shanti. But actually it's a very nuanced and it's a very deep teaching. Allow everything to be as it is. I see someone beating someone innocent. Allow everything to be as it is. Well, as it is there's Dharma in this universe. And it's not good for that person to beat someone. So if I'm in a position to protect that person, just like Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, then he should do his Dharma. So it fully encompasses action. Just allow everything to be as it is. But also, it can include passivity and a witnesshood consciousness. Because there's a silence that's always present. your mind might be so disturbed, so many voices going on in your head. But actually, you know, Krishna says in the Gita, of all secret things, I am silence. So when you're silent, you're touching upon Krishna. And when you're silent, then it's clear what to do. And there's a silence that pervades even the noise. So sometimes we can come to spiritual life. Actually, this is probably the most common thing. We bring into the mindset of meditation, my mind just needs to be completely empty, completely silent. And then we struggle so much trying to become silent, especially when you have an ego trying to do something. What a prescription for suffering and struggle. So when you can connect to a silence that's present even in amongst the noise, the internal and external noise, that's the silence we want to come to.
Like we are in the war, but in the inner we are silent.
Yeah.
That type of silence we need.
Every time you sit down for meditation, the Mahabharata war is going on. The forces of good and evil is battling in the mind. And will Krishna be victorious or not? So when we get lost in this struggle of internally trying to attach to a particular state, then we're out of flow with the natural seasons of the mind, because it's the dharma of the mind to accept and reject. It's always going on. And to just try to artificially arrange the mind as such that it's always just in one state of consciousness, you've kind of misunderstood what the mind is, because it's the dharma of the mind to be accepting and rejecting all the time. So you have to get out of that mind into the silence behind the mind. And then there's a silence, even if the mind's busy, it doesn't matter. It's just like if you go to a big city and you're walking down the main street and you look up big skyscrapers, big buildings, and they look, whoa, they're very immense. And then you get on a flight, aeroplane, 36,000 feet in the air, and you're going over the city, and you look down upon those skyscrapers, they're like little matchsticks. So actually when you go deeper into consciousness, into meditation, then the mind's still doing its thing. Those skyscrapers are still there, but your contextual horizon, your awareness is so broad that it doesn't matter what the mind's doing. Who cares what the mind's doing? Like Srila Prabhupada says, once one devotee asked him, oh, my mind's very busy when I'm chanting. And he said, well, what's your mind got to do with it? But we're always trying to arrange the mind in such a way, always struggling. Just stop struggling. It's easy.
Let mind follow you. Don't follow it.
Yes, we want to be Maharaj, that the mind's like a minister, not that the mind is Maharaj, and we're like one Sudra working for the mind. This is not helpful. So we can start on very easy level, just in our practical everyday lives. Instead of resisting all the dualities, all the change, just realize this is the place of changing seasons. And I'm not just talking about the weather, I'm talking about happiness, distress, loss, gain. Externally, internally, this is always going on, all the time going on, and then we're always in resistance to it. Always in resistance. So how can you ever be aligned with truth, aligned with God, aligned with reality, when there's some part of you resisting it? It doesn't mean you have to accept everything that's going on. Of course, we want to try to contribute helpfully in the world to make it a better place. But even then, when you're coming from a place of resistance, you're disempowered. When you can accept, then you are empowered to change. But so long as you have an ego attachment to a particular perspective or outcome, your source of energy will dry up and you'll become burnt out. But when you can be detached, then you'll be empowered, because the world needs people who don't need the world. As long as you need the world, then you've got so many problems. So Arjuna, he inquires to Krishna at the start of the Bhagavad Gita, I'm in confusion, I'm not sure what to do, now please instruct me. So here he's showing us humility. We need to approach a personality that is not in the confusion of the mind, who is established in transcendental consciousness. That is the Guru. And the Guru, he can show us the way out of this endless struggle, externally and internally. There's a quote, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And just think, how long can you sit by yourself and be at peace with your own mind? How long can you do it? Or not just try to distract yourself, even if the distraction's very good.
We
Right.
have to taste. We don't know how long we can sit. We have to taste.
So, what we're offering here in Bhakti Yoga is a very simple process of how to make the mind your friend. And when the mind's your friend, because it's actually a very close friend, you can have a friend in this country, that country, go to school, but you're not always seeing them. But your mind, you're always with your mind. So it's very helpful to be very good friends with your mind. Otherwise, problem coming. So many problems, endless problems. So we want to cultivate discernment to see how the very subtle ways we're getting caught and making the mind our enemy. How we're in competition with the mind, how we're resisting the mind, and then we get drawn in like a black hole, deeper and deeper into the mind's agenda. And the soul becomes subservient to the mind. So in terms of surrender to God, this is also something very simple, but we live in such a society and we're so conditioned that our entire existence, for numerous births actually, has been totally turned away from God. And because we're so enamored by trying to be the controller, trying to arrange our own life, our own situation, thinking that we are all intelligent and we know what's best, even though someone may be struggling so much and going from here to here to here to here, trying to arrange different situations all the time, still we hold on to this mentality, I am so intelligent, and if I can just arrange something, then I will be happy. So perhaps you know the story of Jonah from the Bible. Now, God told him, you should go to the city and you should give teachings there. And he didn't want to do that because he didn't like that city. They were his nemesis, his enemies. So then God told him to go that way, so he went that way. Followed his own ideas and agenda. And then he got on a ship, and then that ship went across the ocean, further and further away from what God wanted him to do. And then on that ocean, a huge storm came. And then on the ship, they were like, what's going on? And then Jonah, he volunteered himself that actually the cause of the storm is me, God's fury. And he said, the only way to stop the storm is to throw me overboard. So then he volunteered himself and 2 crew members, they grabbed him and they threw him overboard into the ocean. And then the storm subsided. It was calm. And then he was in the ocean and he got swallowed by a whale. And he was in that whale for 3 days. So, because of our vimukkhata, because we have turned our face away from truth, away from God, then we become lost in the ocean of material misconception and confusion. And then we become more and more covered in the bodies of illusion, transmigrating from one species to the next species to the next species in accordance with our karma. But while he was in the body of the whale, then he repented and he prayed to God. And he was in there for 3 days, and then he got spewed out of the mouth of the whale, and he arrived on the beach of that town where God wanted him to go. And then he kind of realized, oh, okay, so I have to do my service. So then he taught there, and all the people became devotees. But still, he didn't like those people. So he was sitting on the outskirts of the town, and it was very hot, and God sent one plant that grew overnight to give him shade. And then that plant was eaten by a worm, and he was annoyed that that plant was eaten, and so he was angry with God. And then God said to him, you know, you're upset over one plant, but I used you as my instrument to help save all of these people in this village. So even though God himself had personally instructed him, still he had this attachment of how we want things to be. So God, or when he comes in the form of Guru, he gives us instructions, but it's still this propensity of how I want things to be, how I want to arrange, how I want to control. It's very difficult to get over this. And just like Gajendra in the Bhagavatam, he was on the celestial planets. Formerly he was King Indradyumna, and then he got a curse and he took on the body of an elephant, but he was on the celestial planets, and he was enjoying there so much. And then he went into the lake, and in the lake he was enjoying with the she-elephants, and when one crocodile came and grabbed his leg, and then him and the crocodile, they were fighting for 1,000 celestial years, very long time. And the Gajendra the elephant, he was becoming weaker because he was not on the land, he was in the water, which is the crocodile's natural territory. And so he was becoming weaker and weaker and weaker, but also that suffering that he was going through, that was purifying him of his previous offenses. So this was actually a blessing. And then when he became purified enough, he remembered his previous lives. And he was actually quite elevated spiritually previously. So then he picked one lotus flower with his trunk, and he offered that to the Supreme Lord. Because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Patram Pushram Phalam, if you just offer me a leaf, offer me a flower, offer me just water, then I will accept. So he offered one lotus flower. And then Krishna came down on the back of Garuda, Vishnu, and he saved him. And he liberated both of those personalities, the crocodile and Gajendra. It's a longer story, we'll tell another time. So when we're in resistance to the suffering of life, all this suffering is actually coming as a reaction of our own past misdeeds. And this is purifying us. And particularly for those who are under the shelter of Guru, their suffering is not the same as the suffering of the ordinary person, because the ordinary person is just going through karma. But the person who is under shelter of Krishna or Guru, then this is purifying them for their spiritual evolution. And so when we're in resistance to this, these are the very things that actually help us grow. And so in this way,
they do have directions.
Hmm?
They do have directions.
Like suffering under the guru, like we do gym, we suffer but we get better body.
yes, you get better body. One day there was one man, he walked the South Pole and the North Pole, and someone asked him, oh, do you enjoy this? And he said, no, it's quite difficult, and it's cold, and it's not very nice when I'm walking in these conditions. And then he asked, oh, well, why do you do it? And then he said, well, after I finished, everyone respects me. And then I give talks at places, and everyone's like, you know, I'm a big shot. So people in the mode of Rajagun, they can undergo suffering because the end result, it puffs up their ego, and then it results in more pride. So we can build up our body and this and that, but all this is karma. And when your body is finished, what result have you got? Only karmic imprints, and then you take that to the next body. So the result is nothing. Not the same as the person under guidance of Guru. Because in that case, Krishna himself is arranging suffering for you to purify you. So we should, oh yes, more suffering. This is good. This is the mentality we want to have. So a very helpful first step is to just stop resisting things around you, but more importantly, internally, the mental commentary you apply to everything. Because this is where the real suffering is. It doesn't actually matter what's going on around you. It's the mental commentary, it's the contraction in the consciousness. That's where the suffering comes from. So just like if it's raining outside, who cares if it's raining? It's just raining. But because we go into a mental commentary around it, oh, rain's not good, then you feel that contraction in your body, physically, mentally, emotionally, and then you become more and more contracted, and then you're like, but if only, and then you go into a mental narrative, oh, the agenda, and you're trying to arrange further contraction, and then you're trying to fulfill that, and then the cycle just goes on and on and on. What about, oh, it's just raining, no problem. And there's a verse in the Tao Te Ching actually. When there's rain, there's only rain. When there's wind, there's only wind. And when the clouds pass, the sun shines through. So this is just completely natural for this world. But because we're so resistant all the time, we just create our own suffering. So perhaps you know, one time there was one goddess, and she was out in the forest, and her maidservants were close by her, and she wandered off a little away from them because she was attracted by one flower. That was the narcissus flower. And so she was picking flowers, and she reached for that narcissus flower, and she picked it, and just as she picked it, a huge crack opened up in the ground, and a man came out with a thunderous roar and seized her, and she didn't even have time to scream, and he took her down into the underworld. And then that crack closed up, and her maidservants were distraught. They couldn't do anything to help her, and there was actually only one maidservant who tried to help her. And her mother was also close by. Her mother's name was Demeter, and that goddess, that young maiden, her name was Persephone. And the person who came up from underground, his name was Hades, the god of the underworld. So Persephone was the daughter of Zeus. And Hades, the god of the underworld, one day he looked up and he, from his abode down in the underworld, and he saw Persephone, and he became very attracted to her. So he wanted to take her as a wife. So he went to the father, he went to Zeus, and he asked for permission. And Zeus gave him permission, and so that's why he came up and he took her. And so as she's coming down to the underworld, she let out a scream. And her mother, on the upper world, she was so distraught, Demeter. And Demeter is the goddess of agriculture, of plants, of abundance of food, and she was in such distress at losing her daughter. So then Demeter, she went on a great quest to try to find her daughter, and for 9 days she roamed all around the earth looking for any clue of the whereabouts of her daughter. And because she was so in distress, and she was the personification of crops and abundance and the harvest, all the plants started to die and lose their leaves, and all the crops stopped growing, because she was the very personality that gave them life. So this was the first winter. In the winter time, all the trees lose their leaves, the deciduous trees. So this is the origin of winter. down in the underworld, Hades, he made a throne for Persephone, and he put Persephone on an equal level next to him. And previously to that, Demeter, Persephone's mother, she was very strict, and she wanted her to remain a virgin her whole life. But Persephone, she actually wanted to marry, but her mother was not going to allow that. And so she had to follow a very strict routine. And when Demeter came to the site where she was taken away and the maidservants were there, she was very angry at the maidservants, done nothing to help her. So she cursed the maidservants, and in one telling, she cursed them to turn into birds. And the bird song is the calling of the maidservants calling for Persephone. And so down in the underworld, Hades, he didn't treat Persephone as a property, as like something he'd acquired, but he actually gave her a lot of respect. And for the first time in her life, she was treated as an equal, as a human, not just like a possession like her mother, who should just follow how she wants to do. So then actually some natural affection started to grow between Persephone and Hades. Maybe a bit of Stockholm syndrome in there as well. So they ended up getting married, and in Demeter's search for her daughter, she went to so many places, but she couldn't find any sign of her daughter anywhere. So then she finally met with Hecate, which is the goddess of witchcraft, of magic, spirits, things like this. And Hecate said, oh, you should go to Helios, the sun god, because he sees everything. So then Demeter, she went up to Helios, to the sun god, and then the sun god, he said, yes, she's been taken down to Hades and to the underworld. So then Demeter, she went to see Zeus, and she was furious at Zeus for allowing this to happen. And so they were having a bit of an argument, and she demanded that Persephone be returned back to the earth plane. And Zeus had already agreed to Hades that actually she can be his wife. So now he was in a bit of a dilemma. So meanwhile, while Persephone was down in the underworld and had actually become quite accustomed to it now, and she developed affection and love for Hades, one gardener came to her, and up to this point she hadn't eaten anything in her time in the underworld. And so one gardener from the underworld came, I guess they've got gardens down there, he came with a pomegranate, and he gave Persephone 6 seeds from that pomegranate, ana fruit, and then Persephone ate that, and because she ate the food, sometimes it is said if you eat the food from someone who has you captive, you are bound to return back to that place, to that person. So then Zeus agreed. Hades took Persephone up to the celestial plane, and Demeter was there with Zeus, and they were arguing, and Demeter demanded that her daughter be returned. And then Zeus said to Persephone, oh dear daughter, how many seeds have you eaten? And then she said, I've eaten 6 seeds. And then so Zeus said, then you will have to return 6 months every year back to the underworld. And 6 months you can be on the earth plane. So in the Greek histories, when spring starts, Persephone is coming back from the underworld, and then the abundance of life comes again, because she is like the luster and the radiance of the earth. So the flowers bloom, the leaves come back on the trees. This is the return of Persephone. And then in the fall, when the leaves start to fall from the trees, then Persephone has returned back to her husband in the underworld. And so every year in the fall, Hades comes back and personally takes his wife back down to the underworld. So what can we learn from this story? Sometimes we take these stories and go, this is just a nice folk tale. But actually, there's so much multi-dimensionality to all these histories, and that's why they've been handed down for many generations, and they've actually served as guiding narratives for society. So Persephone, she went down to the underworld. She went down into her challenges. She went down into the dualities of life, but she didn't resist. Actually, she came to peace with it, and then she learned to love it. Just like if you're a gardener, it's really nice to have seasons, because in the winter time you can just relax. In the spring and summer it's very busy. In the autumn it's the harvest time. The seasons are very nice. But when you live in an apartment in New York City and all your food comes from the supermarket, and you can have all out of season fruits any time of the year, and then one day you go to the shop in the middle of winter and you want your strawberries and whipped cream and they don't have strawberries, oh, it's a big problem. But in the winter time it's like, oh, for the gardener, it's very nice to just be by the fire relaxing. It's time off. So this is one lesson from this tale. Don't resist the dualities of life, and then you can actually be established in that plane of silent consciousness, of Shakshi, the witness. And then whatever changing seasons are happening, internally, externally, you don't need to go into a big melodrama over it, because this is just how things are. And then you're not in resistance to reality, you're not in resistance to God, because we say, oh, I want to surrender to God, but I'll just resist you on every single level. How can that be? Because not a blade of grass is moving without the will of God. So on every level, God's presence is there. So in so many different ways, we struggle and we bring in resistance to God, but at the same time we say, oh yes, I want to surrender. There's another verse from the Tao Te Ching actually. Sometimes the path forward seems to go back. So sometimes, particularly for those engaged in sadhana and spiritual practice, they might reach some place of very nice feeling, very nice consciousness. Maybe that stays for some time, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, maybe 3 years. And then something happens and it looks like they've gone off the path, or they've lost what they had. And they get all upset. Oh no, what's going on? But actually, it's just like in European countries, there's canals. And in the canals, they have, there's water in them, and every now and again they clean them out. Shopping trolleys, wheelchairs, cars, so whatever is in there. And so when we're doing spiritual practice, purification is going on. And when it looks like we've maybe lost some level of attainment, that's often when the deeper dredging of the canals is happening, and all the shopping trolleys and the cars, they're actually dredging it, and that's not a pleasant experience of us, because the deep-rooted anarthas, the unwanted muck from the heart, is actually getting cleansed out. And we think, oh, what happened to my spiritual practice? What happened, Krishna Guru? You've left me. Or what am I doing wrong? You're actually doing everything right, because you're suffering so much. But this suffering is purifying. And, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, you'll witness some of the worst behavior from religious people, which might sound a little odd to hear. Because it's just like when you see a river, a very wide river, and sometimes in the middle of the river there's one island, and the current's just very calm around that island. And so this island is like the island of Maya. So, there's a saying, ignorance is bliss. So when you're in the ignorance of the material world, and things are just going on, you're just watching TV and just relatively happy. But when you try to come out of that river of illusion towards the bank, sometimes the river's flowing very, very fast. And to come out of that river is very difficult. And so many challenges, so much deep samskaras, impressions from the subconscious mind have to come up and out. And when that's coming out, particularly if you're not under the guidance of Guru or not really following the teachings, so many bad behaviors can come. So this is not an excuse for all nonsense religious behaviors, but for those who are sincerely following what St. John of the Cross calls the dark night of the soul. Because for many people, for their deep-seated karmas, not everyone's so karmically light. If you're karmically light, then maybe your journey is quite smooth, at least in this birth. But for some people who have a lot of karma to work through, their spiritual journey, at least at a certain point, can really bring on a lot of this stuff. And for some people, they get very disappointed and maybe even leave the path or find a tradition, find some other technique that doesn't trigger their samskaras, and they think, oh yes, now I'm happy. But this is just going into sattva, and you become conditioned by a feeling of satisfaction, but you're not really making any real progress, because it's all karma, it's all in the gunas. So what's the result? Just some temporary abasion of your suffering, but there's no actual deeper purification going on. So in modern times, we're not taught to tolerate, we're not taught patience. Just patience. Like, when was the last time you heard a political leader say, oh, we just need to give that 20 years? Like, in older traditional cultures, you know, the older wise people, they would give advice to the community, and they have life experience, and they're not thinking just in their 4-year term in politics. They're thinking lifetimes. Like in certain American and First Nation traditions, every decision has to be made taking into account 7 generations. So if you've got a perspective, the decisions you make are 7 generations forward, and it's a total different way to engage with the world. Like when the colonization started happening in Australia, it was so foreign to the British that the Aborigines just wanted to leave the land as they found it. This was so foreign to them that they didn't want to develop it, they didn't want to drink cups of tea with milk or anything like that. This was so foreign to their conception of what is progress, then they deemed them they're not even human. If they don't have the progressive materialistic narrative that we have, then these people aren't even human. And this, even in the 1960s, it was still legal in some parts of Australia to shoot Aborigines. And so very much of this mentality, it's still very prevalent in the consciousness, and that maybe not shooting people, but this particular way of viewing the world as superior. And it's a great shame in cultures that for many, many generations, spirituality has been at the center of that culture, that mentality of progressive materialism is now taking center stage. This is a great shame, particularly for the youth of these countries. So this topic of surrender is quite big, actually, but it's also very simple. So, one of the beginning ways to surrender to God, to surrender to reality, to surrender to existence, is to inquire from someone who is not just another conditioned soul lost in their mind. So this is the position of Sadguru, the true bona fide teacher. And just as Arjuna is giving the example in first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, oh Krishna, I'm in confusion, please instruct me. And then we can surrender to that Guru by trying to follow his instructions. So We have to learn how to surrender. And one of the root methodologies of surrender is just to fully trust that Krishna is maintaining everything for you. Not in such a way, oh yes, because sometimes we can approach this like, I just allow everything to be as it is, or just surrender in such a way that we're still holding on. I'll surrender so I can get what I want. I'll allow everything to be as it is, because then maybe I'll get what I want. And so in this way, we're not actually allowing things to be as they are. We're not actually surrendered. We're business transaction. And then if Krishna doesn't come to the party, then it's like, oh, I'll just leave the path. Why is Krishna not making nice business with me? Because actually we don't know what's good for us. If you knew what's good for you, you wouldn't be here in the material world in Kali Yuga. It'd be on some other location. So, but we're not so humble, you know. We hold on to this propensity. I can arrange, if only I had this, if only I had that. It's just a prescription for suffering. And we'll do anything, then just stop resisting. And even if we try stop resisting, we're only doing it to the extent so then I can get what I want. So what does it mean to actually surrender, to actually allow things to be as it is? Because sometimes we hear this and we think, yeah, I know what that means. Or I'll compartmentalize that in my surrender box. And I've heard some teachings about it, so yeah, I know enough. But actually, it's a real invitation to explore in your life. Allow everything to be as it is. Okay, I had so many plans today of what I wanted to do, but so many other things have come up. So I'll do those things. It's allowing things to be as they are. Not getting attached to your preferences. Just like Krishna's instructing to Arjuna. Allow things to be as they are. It's your dharma to be a warrior, engage in the battle, but do it as an instrument for me. So in no way is this just emphasizing go off to the Himalayas and be a yogi in a cave. Be fully engaged in the world. If you're a mother with children, allow things to be as they are. You want some time for yourself, but most likely that's not going to happen. You can't even go to the toilet without the kids walking into the bathroom. You just have to allow things to be as they are for that stage of your life. Because the more we're in resistance, the more we suffer. And, you know, particularly in the last few years, I've seen a lot of people resist a lot in terms of how they want the world to be. Political narratives, social narratives, stuff like this. And then they just go into a whirlwind in their head because they're so in resistance to what is. And so this is another really interesting thing to explore into. Whatever's happening in reality, that is reality. We think, that we've gone off the course, and you know this is not in alignment with truth or this or that. Whatever's happening is happening, and that is reality. And if you have resistance to it, you are out of reality. It doesn't mean that you can't try to add some sattva guna in there, but it's like Mahatma Gandhi. When he was shot, what did he say? Hey Ram, yes. So this actually shows his state of spiritual evolution. At the time of death, what you remember, that sets the scene for your next birth. So what did he remember? His Ishtadev, Lord Ram. And so he was a very great student of Bhagavad Gita. And because he had that more transcendental understanding, then he could engage in the world to bring about change that could not happen by force. Because there's a lot to that story, but the point is, the best help you can be is being in the world but not needing the world. Like Jesus says, be in this world, but this is not our permanent home. And then paradoxically, the more, it's like Gurudev. He's always in Goloka Vrindavan, but he's the best help to this world. And he's not running around trying to fix the world. but paradoxically, he's the best fix-it man for the world. But we get everything all backwards. If only I can just fix this and arrange that and make this into heaven. And then we get burnt out and we get so depressed when it doesn't happen. Is it not so?
Here, when we are this time, this is the peak season. Some people very like it. After the peak season, when things are normal, they will just don't like it. They want to live.
Yes.
Normal people like they are not devotee.
Yeah.
But for devotee like real devotee, this place would be like same for 12 months. Even in party it's same. Even after this peak season it's same.
Yeah.
Just beautiful as it is. We don't need like party like this place for devotees.
Yeah.
That's tell us we are should surrender. Like we just don't need this party. If there is no party, we are fine. If there is party, we are fine.
Yes. To be established in that equanimity. It's actually more bliss than the person who's experiencing the party. And so the person can still party or not party. But if you're established in, you're actually happy either way, then this is much more relishable than the person who's like a junkie needing this experience, that experience from one to the other. It's a very volatile lifestyle, and it really just pulls you down and down and down and doesn't lead to any kind of auspicious lasting result. And that's very much the mentality of modern lifestyle, is to just be chasing one thing to the other, one thing to the other, reaching for something and pushing something else away. And that's the whole struggle we need to get out of. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy variety. That's always being there, but to be okay whether you get what you want or you don't get what you want. Like Ram Dass says, oh, I didn't get what I want. How interesting. And then just exploring into that. That's quite an interesting spiritual practice, you know? Oh, I didn't get what I want. How wonderful. So I'll kind of wrap it up there. Been babbling on for a while. We could talk a lot more about this surrender, and maybe we will this week, like the limbs of surrender. But the main kind of limb of surrender, this right, Mohan, is to accept that Krishna is the ultimate shelter, is the protector of everything. And if you have this, then life's okay. Whether you have a big mansion or you're living like a Babaji on the sidewalk, it actually doesn't matter. And if you can fully take shelter of Krishna, you will feel that empowerment. You will feel Krishna's protection. So I'll just end with a couple more things here, briefly. There's a quote by William Blake: "The deeper the sorrow, the greater the joy." And there's a quote by Rumi: "Where the crack is, that's where the light gets in." So, like Persephone, she went down into the underworld. She went down into suffering. But that got her to a new level of consciousness. That got her to a level of spiritual perception that most people won't come anywhere near to when they're just living a very shallow existence of not diving deep into their own purification or working in harmony with the dualities of life. We're just always trying to live a very shallow existence of not triggering ourselves in any way. So then no real work actually happens. And the more we suffer, then often that leads to the biggest development, the biggest growth, the most maturity. Now you reflect in your own life. When have you matured the most? In times of great happiness? Or maybe not immediately at the time, but when you're suffering and then afterwards you're like, wow. Because the suffering's not someone else's fault. It's our fault. We bring that, of how we're relating to it or our past actions. And then you realize, man, I was doing that thing for so long. And I was blaming everyone else, but actually it was my fault. And then when you get that, when you see that, then you'll come to a new level of consciousness, at least in that context, and that'll be very liberating. So the suffering also brings liberation. And so, who experiences the most suffering? This is a question for the devotees.
Buddha doesn't.
Yes. For the equal amount of attachment you have to something, that equal amount of suffering will be there. So who has the most suffering? Yuga yatam nimeshena chaksha pravayishyatam sunigam jagatsavam govinda vahinami. When Radharani closes her eyes, she's feeling such separation, more suffering from the past, the present, and the future of all material universes put together, all that suffering just when she's blinking and she can't see her beloved. Of course, her suffering is transcendental, it's not like our material suffering, but because she is experiencing such that deep separation, then she's experiencing the most joy. And because she's experiencing that most joy, even Krishna can't understand it. So Krishna has to come to this world himself in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to taste just one drop. Oh, what is that that Radharani's tasting? What is that love? Because even Krishna doesn't have it. Only Radharani has it. So Krishna becomes like a beggar, just trying to taste one drop of her brain. So from the transcendental perspective, this is a bit of an analogy. Radharani suffers the most, but she also has the most joy. So when you hear about these, for lack of a better term, myths, all throughout different cultures, for thousands and thousands of years, the opening to impulses that permeate every level of reality. And this used to be trauma work in former times, to hear about the suffering of Persephone. And the Greek myths are full of people being devoured, male and female and cursed and all kinds of things. That then you get out of your little self-enamored me, I and mine melodrama and just, oh, what am I going through? And you realize on every level of creation there's expansion and contraction, meeting, separation, breathing in, breathing out. It's, I invite everyone to take a deep breath in and then breathe out. A couple more times. And then just feel into that sensation in your whole being when you breathe out. So that's what it's like to surrender. It's so easy. It's so natural. And what's it like to engage with the world from that feeling? From whatever's going on. The baby's crying, the busy in the kitchen, doing your seva, doing this and that, just from that relaxed place. It's very different than the mental hamster wheel of resistance in the mind. It's a very different energetic space. And that's what we're all striving for on one level. And it's so simple. So just stop. Stop struggling. That's my invitation to you. And coming under guidance of Guru, and step by step we can move towards that. Simple but very difficult. Only because we make it difficult. So thank you for patiently listening. Any thoughts, reflections or questions?
When we experience like surrendering, having repentance, the mercy comes. And when I listen what you say, like I'm feeling like it's going together. Because we don't have to expect anything. We don't know when it will come. It's, I don't know, I just want to have maybe you can explain more than me.
See the subtle ways we hold on. I'll surrender if I get some mercy. We can have that mentality, or we can just surrender. And if mercy comes, or if it doesn't come, it doesn't matter. And that's why Radharani's saying, last verse of Sri Shastakam, Alisam va para ratam panastomam ardishanam mamahatam karotu va yatha tatha va viplato lamprato mapranas nasastusa evalnipra. This is actually surrender, this verse. Everything's in Sri Shastakam, from start to finish. Let him embrace me, or let him trample me under his feet. Let him cruelly pierce the deepest core of my heart by not being present before me. Let that debauchery do whatever he likes. He is still my Prananath, the Lord of my Prana, and I have no other than him. So like Prahlad Maharaj is praying in the Bhagavatam, I don't care if I'm born in heaven or hell, I just want to remember you so I can serve you. So this is another very good example of surrendering. So when we surrender not for a business transaction, it's a huge relief, because we're not carrying around these burdens of wants, desires, so many things. And mercy comes. Mercy comes with that. What can I say? Maybe not always in the way we think mercy's going to come. Like Krishna, he's very tricky. And one time I remember I was reading the Krishna book, and I read in there, one sign that Krishna gives you his mercy is he takes everything away from you. And then I knew, oh, it's coming. And it came very heavily. But I could see that there was mercy through it all. It was not enjoyable, but I knew this was carrying me somewhere. So we want to have that kind of vision, that even through the suffering, because in bhakti, it's all profit, there's no loss. Even the suffering is gain, because you're gaining more and more in your development of bhakti. So, Krishna's mercy is everywhere. We just have to allow that. Anything else? Thank you. Kirtan? Going to have another kirtan. There's some more practical steps in terms of surrender, like 6 angas, 6 limbs of surrender, but we'll cover that in another class. Already talked too much today.
Radharani feels actually also joy of meeting in care, separation.
Yes, totally. It's transcendental, but just to give some metaphor.
Why we should go to transcendental world, there's a suffering as much as, or even more.
There's suffering everywhere, but one is material and one is spiritual, but you can't get away from these pulses of reality.
Even in spiritual world.
Mother Yashoda is always in so much anxiety. Is Krishna getting enough food? Oh, how's my Kanaya? But the suffering that we're feeling here is always a perverted reflection of the transcendental suffering there. So the suffering there is really just waves in the ocean of bliss. So it's not the same. The suffering that we experience here is the contracted reflection of that in the material aggregate. But the waves in the ocean of praying, the ocean of love in the spiritual world, there may be expansion and contraction, but still the ocean is bliss. So chant with all your heart and dive into that ocean.